Good morning to everyone. Today we are going to see about how to validate the user input, that is validation control in ASP.NET. First thing we are going to see about what are all the goals of validating the user input. Why should we validate the user input? So before we are entering the data into the field, we have to make sure that whether the data entered by the user is correct or not. That is the main goal of the validating data. So why we should validate the data is to maintain data integrity. The data which is entered by the user should be correct. So that is why we are validating the data. Then the second point is how to validate data. So we have to check the user input on client side or on the server side. So there are two times you can check the user input. You can check on the either on the client side or on the server side. So example is, so if you are designing a form, you will have various fields. So first you have to make sure that whether the field is empty or not. Suppose you are keeping a text box control. So when you enter something into that text box, you have to make sure the data is entered properly. So that is the example. Second one is the data can be validated on two sides, that is client side versus server side. So in the client side validation, it is done by the browser. So the browser uses JavaScript for validation, and it does not require any HTTP request plus response. That is on the server side, we doesn't require any HTTP request or response in order to validate the data. So other thing is on the server side. So in the server side validation, the validation is done by the server. So the server uses C# language in order to validate the data. In server side, the server requires the HTTP request plus response. So this is the difference between the client side validation and the server side validation. So the next thing we are going to see about ASP.NET validation controls. What are all the basic validation controls that are available in ASP.NET? So there are 6 types of validators that are available in ASP validation control. The first control is called as a required field validator. So the required field validator will make sure that all the fields are filled, that is the input field cannot be empty. So when you leave the field and click on the submit button, it will shows that the fields are empty. That is, you have to fill all the required field. So that is called as required field validator. So the second type of validator is compare validator. So compare validator in the sense, this validator will compares the input. So compares the input given by the user. So it uses some equal to, greater than or less than operators in order to compare those fields. For example, if you are giving a password field, so the password field, first you will enter the password, and in the second field also the form will ask you to repeat the password. So in that scenario, you need that compare validator. So that compare validator will compare whether you have entered the same password in two fields. So in that case, this compare validator is required. So the next validator is range validator. So the range validator, it will also compare the range. For example, if you are giving any age related data, so you can use this range validator. Suppose when you want to enter your age between 16 to 30, so you can use this range validator. So the next type of validator is regular expression validator. So the regular expression validator checks the entry matches a pattern defined by the regular expression. You can define your own expression in this regular expression validator. The next thing is custom validator. So this custom validator make your own validation. The last one is validation summary. So the validation summary will summarizes, that is, it will displays all the error message from the validator in one spot. Suppose if you design a form using the above 4 validators, so when you keep a validation summary, it will displays all the error messages which you have given in that form. So these are the basic 6 types of validator that we will use in the validation control. So you can see it briefly in the practical session. This is only the introduction about the what are all the basic validators. So next thing is what are all the common properties of validation control. So there are 4 properties of validation control. The first property is control to validate. The second property is error message. Third one is text, and fourth one is CSS class. So the control to validate means the control to be validated. You should give the control which is to be validated, that is main important field, important property of the validation control. So whatever control you are choosing, you have to fill this field, control to validate field. Next thing is error message property. So you have to give what should be your message in order to be displayed in the form. So that is called as error message. Then text. So text means the error message used in the validation control. For example, if you want to display the message which is entered is wrong, or the password which is entered is wrong, so in that scenario you have to give the message in the text. So that is called as text property. The last one is CSS class. The CSS class will show you the style appearance of the message. For example, what will be the color of that message, font size of that message, like that. So for that CSS class is used. So next thing is we can see what are all the validators with example. So the first type of validator is required field validator. So the required field validator, here they have given the example as name and gender. So there is a save button. So when you give the input in the name and gender only, so it will accept. So without giving the input in those controls, if you click on the save button, so it will show the message as name is required and gender is required. So this is about required field validator. So the next type of validator is compare validator. So this compare validator will compare a value in one control with the fixed value or value in another control. So this compare validator has 2 properties, that is control to compare, validate compare, and operator. So you should use these 3 properties in order to use the compare validator. So for example, they have given password, retype password, and date of application. For example, if you are filling a form in order to log in into some website or whatever, so it will ask you to fill the password field and you have to retype that password field. In that scenario, you have to enter your password twice. So the compare validator is used to check whether the password which you have entered in those 2 fields are same or not. So this is called as compare validator. The next validator is range validator. So the range validator will predetermine the range. You can predetermine the range in fields. For example, if you want to enter an age of the person between 16 age, for example, range validator, this range validator is used to predefine the range which you have given. There are three basic properties in this range validator, which are termed as type, maximum value and minimum value. The range in the sense you have to give the data between your selected range. For example, if you have to enter the age of the person between 16 to 35, you have to give the value, minimum value in the minimum value property and the maximum value in the maximum value property. So in this example, the age of the person is given between 1 and 100, and the date is mentioned between 1/1/2012 to 13/12, that is 31/12/2012. So the date which you have which you will enter in that field must be between the range which you are given predefined. So that is called as range validator. The next type of validator is a regular expression validator. The regular expression validator will allow you to validate the input text, which it will match between the pattern against the regular expression. So the regular expression is set in validation expression property. For example, here an email email field can be set using the regular expression validator. For example, if you enter an email ID in a form, you have to give it in a correct format. For example, if you miss some fields, predefined fields which you should give in the email ID. Suppose you missed out at symbol in while giving your email, it will not accept. So at that time it has to show the error message as invalid email. So for that purpose, this regular expression validator is used. The next type of validator is custom validator. So this custom validator is used on both the client side and server side. The server side validation should be written in any .NET languages like C# or VB.NET. So for this, the example is given as, suppose you have to enter some data, that is numeric data. If you have to enter it in some predefined number, for example, you have to enter it as an even number or odd number, predefinedly you have to mention, that is it should be entered only in odd number wise or even number wise. So for this purpose, this custom validator is used. And the next thing is validation summary. As I said before, the validation summary will show all the errors or error messages which you have given in the form. So for that purpose, this validation summary is used. So the next thing is, what are all the base validator classes you are using in ASP.NET? They have mentioned. Now, so the first class is control to validate. This is one of the main class which you are using in ASP.NET. So it indicates the input control to validate. Which control to validate you have to mention here. The next class is display. So this display will show the error message. How the error message is shown. It should indicate how the error message is shown. Next one is enable client script. So it will